All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to do some painting, a couple different layers, and some decals on the Panzer IV. Starting with, this is a one-shot primer from Ammo by MiG. Their primers, their one-shot primers are awesome. Um, Great coverage, a little bit tricky. You definitely want to make sure it says water-based, it is, but you want that MiG acrylic thinner, or else it can make a mess in your airbrush. You want to spray it and get it out of your airbrush as quick as you can, would be my best advice. So priming it in white, uh, usually prime in black, reason being I'm going to do a primer, like a secondary color of gray, German gray over this. So I wanted to start light because it's going to be a desert vehicle in the end. So I did a lot of research, and by a lot, I mean a night's worth, an hour or two. Um, I do believe, now I haven't been able to sort this out fully, but I do believe that they came in that tropin, that light brown color from the factory. At some point they did. That I found out for sure. What I don't know, because this is an early production, so you could assume this could be the first one or the first batch, is did they come gray from the factory and then they were painted in the field, the desert color. So a little bit of artistic liberty taken here. The reason I did that was I've never really been happy with chipping. I don't like sponge chipping, drawing it on with a brush. It can easily become too much, and sponge chipping and brush chipping doesn't give you a three-dimensional effect. So we went with the German gray, and instead of the chipping effect, I have the scratches. See a couple more spots. I need to spray it again, but I have the scratches effect, which is what we're going to use here shortly. There it is. Um, it is very similar, but you're going to take off. It's like a little bit less effective, so it's going to take off a little bit less. And I went ahead and I really made sure that I sprayed two different coats. So I went around the vehicle once and sprayed one coat, and I went around the vehicle again and sprayed a second. Before it was dry. I've done this before, and if you spray too much chipping fluid and just one layer of paint, you can end up with some really big chips, which on whitewash looks awesome. Just trying to do paint chips, it's a little bit much. So this technique requires a little bit of extra work. You'll see the toothbrush doesn't quite get it, but there it is, painted up in the XF93 um, as the diagram instructions, whatever, um, show it for option A, which is that desert vehicle. So again, get the gray underneath. There is a layer of chipping fluid on it. And then we're just going to let this paint dry. Probably let it dry for like an hour or two. I wouldn't, you can look up on MiG. I think it says to do it within like 24 hours, but within a couple hours, I've found the best result to get actually chips. If you wait too much longer, especially if you did it like I did with that second coat, you might not get those chips. Now, I did the same with the jerry cans here. I used it was gunmetal or aluminum, the paint marker from AK, and then put a little bit of chipping fluid on here. Now, this is a sloppy process because I don't have a jig to hold these. Um, so you'll see my finger peels off a layer or two at some point, but it's okay because they end up looking good. This is something else. I've actually never gone this route before. but I wanted to, especially once you have the chipping fluid out. Um, it definitely brings some life to kind of a lifeless accessory, right? It's easy to dry brush bags and tarps and do that, but jerry cans, besides like a dark wash, they kind of boring. So you can see here, there you go. There's the finger, but the bottom isn't really seen anyways, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But it just gives you that nice aluminum chip underneath. And I don't know, chipping doesn't need to just be vehicle paint, right? You could use this for a wide variety of applications. And so if you've never used chipping fluid before, see that I'm just wetting it with water. Basically, the premise, it's the hairspray technique. You can do it, I guess, with hairspray. I've never tried it. But you paint your base layer, you spray the chipping fluid, and then you spray your top coat. You let it dry. And then you come back, an hour or two later, wet it with water, and you just wipe away with a brush. So here I'm trying to figure out a painting jig for myself to no avail. We'll just go back to the fingers and see once that water soaks in a little bit. There we got some nice chips, and just keeping it random, not trying to do too much. I don't want it to be all aluminum color. All right, so next up, we're going to chip the vehicle here. Now, I've already wet it with a brush, and the brush, I don't want to destroy my brush. So got the old toothbrush out, not the one I use every morning and every night. Um, but be careful with the toothbrush. These are really stiff bristles on this one in particular. I guess you could buy a softer one. But just of the little pieces. I don't have any gun barrels or anything like that on here yet. And you'll see it is being a little stubborn at first. Which again is, I'd rather it be a little stubborn. It's probably only taking off that first coat of paint at this moment, but I wanted it to be a little bit more stubborn than for it to be easy. So when it's easy, sometimes two swipes of the brush will start taking off paint. So when in doubt, just get everything wet, get it wet all over, and really let that water soak through the paint. And then once you get that, we'll start to get some small chips here. And never fear, because there's other ways to chip the paint and to use that chipping fluid. All right, here you can actually see it starting to work. So a little bit of elbow grease, and you'll see some of the sides of these panels and things are going to start chipping off here. So again, let the paint soak, and then you just need a little elbow grease. And at the end of the day, what's the worst that's going to happen? You damage the paint, you want the paint to look damaged anyways, right? So this is kind of like round one of chipping, is a brush and or toothbrush. And then we'll have a little bit more precision here in a second when we get to the next step. All right, and here we'll just see the next example. So you can see a few chips on the front, which again is all I want. I don't want this to be winter whitewash. What I found happening with the toothbrush is that it was getting kind of the creases. So like on this box in particular, it was getting the back, the part closest to the vehicle, rather than the front. So the second option, and I just use a toothpick. There you can see some small chips on there, which is good. But the second option is you can take a toothpick. I've also seen little metal metal devices in pretty much one touch of the toothpick. You have to be really gentle as I just stab it a million times, but um, it pretty much takes the paint off the second that you touch it. So there you see some nice chips up top. That was done with the toothbrush, and then there in the box, and then basically everything in the middle panels. I use that what do you call it? The the toothpick again to kind of get all those different chips. So and then a lot of chips and scratches and stuff. You can use the toothpick for scratches. Um, I put a lot where the tools are going to go. One, because they're going to cover a lot of it in the bags. Um, but and then the jerry cans, right? Like if they're you're not even going to see some of this stuff, but just pretending that they're ripped out of there constantly and put back in and scratching the vehicle. So just concentrate on really the edges and then areas of high wear and tear, but try to space it out. So do heavy in some areas and lighter in some. Just keep it a little bit random, and you'll be good. So road wheels, because we're also doing some precision painting here at this time. And I did it until the end. I used the AK Real Color Rubber Black to do the road wheels. Now, I am not happy with them because I know I could have done it better with a brush, but I wanted to give it a full shot. So you can see, like for the edges and even getting into the middle, I just color the middle. I end up jamming the pen in there to make it all black for shadowing, anyways. But you'll see the flat side of the road wheel is very easy um, to get. And I know, I mean, you'd have to put your face into the screen to really see, but there's a lot of little bumps where the black goes over, and I don't know. I don't think I'll use them for road wheels again. Maybe for tires, something like that, a little bit less precision, definitely, but not for that again. So just wanted to throw that in there because I know we did the review the other day. But on to tracks. Um, I don't want these to look rusty, especially the more that I look at pictures of tracks. I do like the rusty look, even in modeling. I don't care if it's real or not. But I wanted them to have some sort of that color. So this primer, it's not a one shot. This is a really watery primer. It's really thin. I have not thinned it, but it comes out and it takes basically like a day to dry. Um, but it's really good. And for workable tracks, the problem is if you lay them down like this, you'll never be able to cover them, right? Because they bend so much. So that watery primer kind of soaks into those cracks, which makes it a lot easier. Now, this is something brand new that I am very happy with. I will be using this a lot, pretty much in every single vehicle going forward. This is from AK Interactive. They did not pay me for this, not yet at least, if they're listening. This is just their hard chipping lead, and I think there's a soft one too. Um, I don't know what you know, I wash my hands after. I wouldn't put the thing in, don't put it in your mouth, but I'm pretty sure it's just a like stick of like soft lead. Um, but it's really good. And if you don't like it, you can just use a brush and wipe it away. Once it's clear coated, it's good, but we'll go back to that in a second. Um, so here we got the track sprayed in dark iron, and I had to go back and spray them a second time because of those cracks in the workable tracks. I think that's the only negative thing I would say. You'll see when I flex them. Some of the spots like I wanted were covered with that rust effect, and you can still see like some of that brown from that rust is showing through, which I wanted to double as kind of like desert, dirt and sand. But it's just that little bit of mist coverage when you wrap them around the wheels. Now, I'm going to, which is ridiculous because they're workable, but I'm going to end up cementing them in place because the wheels don't spin anyways. Um, and then just taking a brush, and if there's anything visible, after I do a track wash, you can just brush them in that way. That's kind of the workaround, and then any part of the top and bottom doesn't matter. And so here, this is a good little tip I stole from Champion Scale Modeling. Um, the tool clamps, drill that little hole in them. I ended up doing the same on the tracks, and it's a really minor detail, but it looks great. So I would definitely recommend just a really little thing. And the kit came with great tool clamps and really good tracks, but the tracks didn't match the workable ones because they didn't have the hole in the side. So here you can see touching the road wheels again. See, the marker doesn't fit in there. Had I kept these off, it would have been easier, but it wouldn't have fixed drawing outside the lines when it came to drawing up against that ridge between the rim and the wheel. That's where the marker did not impress me. So if if you have bigger wheels, maybe a bigger ridge, you can definitely do it. I wouldn't, if I built this kit again, I wouldn't use that. I'd use a paintbrush. My $1.99 Tamiya paintbrush, I think, does a better job. So that's a little thing to note that I could not for the life of me figure out how to get that sandbag. It's not long enough, so I positioned it that way. It worked, but we got all the accessories. Still have the exhaust left off because I'm going to slather it in rust pigments and washes and things like that. So that really won't be attached until the very final steps. But it's looking good. I got all the little pieces and whatnot painted up. Use the paint markers on all the tools and the bags, and very happy with those. And you can see kind of an example. I'll have to figure it out a little bit better, but um, really nice track sag with those T-Rex tracks. And there I kind of pre-did those, but you do have to kind of work with them because they will sag downward and be flush up top. I think that's probably the biggest downside against them in metal tracks is they'll just come over the left and right, the idler and the sprocket, and they'll just fall down, and you'll have this big sag at the bottom. So that's why I'm going to end up, gluing them in place, at least on like the top wheels, maybe the two of the top ones to keep that kind of perfect sag look. All right, and now we have clear coated. Clear coated last week. I try to let my clear coat sit for a week. I haven't before. I've gone anywhere from 1 to even 3 days. Left it overnight, that sort of thing. And then during the weathering stage, it's a mess. And you start taking up paint, and it's like, oh, what's going on, right? Um, and there's two kinds of like hazy that can happen. You can get hazy from clear coat if it's humid. I get it a lot because I live in a coastal town. Um, don't fear, just respray it. So there's been, I remember models where I was like, oh my god, I ruined it, right? And I was about to throw it in the trash. Just respray it if that ever happens to you. But I found if I don't let the clear coat sit, I just I get like a lot of like hazing. Like it almost turns it's like blending the lacquer, the enamel product that I'm using, and then the acrylic like underneath, and it turns this weird gray haze. So for a couple years now, I let them really cure with that. I just did Tamiya clear coat, the TS80, the flat. I know, and I've done it before, and I do think it works very well. A lot of folks before this stage will do the gloss coat, just one for the decals, I guess, to stick to, and then two, um, it definitely makes cleaning up the enamel washes and things easier. I don't particularly know the science behind it, but it is what it is. That being said, I don't have any gloss coat. I ordered so many of the TS80s. I think, well, so many, I have like five, but I use those. So it is what it is. It's easy to get too much in this hobby. And personally, and I know we all do have a hard time using the things that we have and making sure they're gone before, we get something new. So, um, I used the other decal. It said to put this on the back that you can't see when building this box, and then you put like another little white one on, but I like this one better, so it's going on. And just some German phrase there, but the decals are very simple, and I love the decal on the box. Might be my favorite part of this kit. I'm simply amused, but we're gonna do a basic concept of. I have the Mark Fit. I think it's just the normal Mark Fit. I have a couple of the micro sols and all those things, but this is just what I've been going with recently. I try to brush a little bit on the vehicle. It kind of pools wherever the brush is, so it's a little bit difficult to do. Maybe that's my clear coat, right? But then the big knock on Tamiya is their decals. This is this is a this is an interesting example, the one I'm about to put on, but I will say get I get the water in the faucet steaming before I pour it in, and I have everything ready to go. So I start applying my decals right away. Now, within 2 or 3 seconds, that decal is probably ready to come off the paper, but hold it for like 10, 15-ish, and you'll get a good result. There's still carrier film, but I've found the hotter, and I've heard others say this as well, the hotter that you get that water, the less carrier film you'll have at the end. So these 215 decals go right over that little like port, vision port, whatever it is, and they are big. They are thick. Um, this is going to be an interesting kind of weathering scenario. I plan on sanding them down, but again, you see me kind of pushing it into those cracks. There's going to be pieces that are going to be harder to sand, pieces that are easier. I would definitely and be really careful with this, especially you have an extra 215 decal, so I just went for it with the first one. But try to get some holes up against that because it doesn't really want to sit flat. And this is such a big decal. It looks awesome when you look at it from an angle. It was still drying, but when you look at it flat on, straight on, it's shiny and it's really big. But when you look at it from the side, it looks great. And it really adds to that red number with this vehicle looks really, really good. So take your time with these because these are kind of make it or break it decals. Not just because they're on the turret and on the side, that they're big and they're going over, you know, multiple surfaces. So it's not only going over that vision port, I think it's a vision port, we'll call it that, but there's also three little I assume they're bolts. Um, Left and right of the number one, and then right where like the one goes. So you want to make sure that this gets really, really stuck on. Um, if you can get this decal on, you can pretty much get any decal in the world on. So first things first is getting it into position, and then getting that micro sol or what do I have? Mark Strong. Get that Mark Strong all over that decal. It's a little dangerous to work with a decal when it has that on it. So just be aware of that. Again, we have an extra, so I'm being a little daring with the first one, just in case I mess it up. But get those holes up against that hatch, just to let some air out because it's really, really difficult to get this flat. But we want to, once we have those holes, we want to use that brush and just brush to the outside or brush all in the same direction. So anything to get all those little pockets and ripples that it's impossible to put this down without the ripples. So you're going to need to work this one. Um, I ended up going back 4 different times. It's still the fourth one is still drying. I'm very happy with it. I might do it one more time. So we'll see. Um, but I just keep going back. I keep putting the decal set on there, the Mark Strong, and then I keep just using. I have those Tamiya Q-tips, which I've looked at for years and been like, why would I ever buy them? They're actually only a couple bucks, and if you get the pointed ones, they're strong. They're really thick. Um, so really, really good tool for this particular application too, because the point will not bend, and it won't do what like a normal cotton swab will kind of fray outward and turn into like wool, stick to things. These don't do that. They're made of something different. So just keep sticking that Q-tip into the ridges and kind of smoothing it outward, right? And just keep doing that. And it looks good. And then I leave it and I come back in 20 minutes and, you know, 50% of the air bubbles are kind of there again. So I just keep going back and I keep doing it again. Um, for as an amazing of a kit as this is definitely, and again, I built it in a day. It was a long day. I modeled a lot, but this is definitely the most difficult part of this kit. Because you put those 215s, you put it on the back. This one's easy. But then you put it on the other side of the turret as well, and it's in the same predicament. So take your time with that. Keep going back. Don't let it dry overnight. Because once it's dry, it's like actually fully dries for the first time. It's going to be hard to correct it. And these are really difficult. You can see this is rippling right here. I think Tamiya did a good job of making it thin and trying not to make it as thick as some of their other decals, but it makes it hard to push it and correct its position. So that's just another thing that makes it a little bit harder to work with over those ridges. But I do think that the final product is good. And we have a couple iron crosses and things to put on here. But again, same concept. This is easier to see the concept because there's no ridges, but um, that brush is, I want to say that's the MIG brush, Ammo by MIG. It's their decal brush. It's it's not that soft, but it brushes very soft. So you'll see me using it to kind of push the decals around. You can use tweezers too, um, which I do at one point in a minute here, but I usually use the back of the tweezers because it's like, a little rounded. It's a little bit less harsh, but um, That's a good option as well. But that brush is really, really good to just brush out those creases and those little air pockets that form. So this one, something to kind of look for. Now I just tucked it up under. I ended up putting like 3 coats on this one as well of the decal solution. It's it's too big. Um, you either are going to have it overhanging on the top or overhanging it on the bottom. So I would choose bottom, as I did, but you're going to have to let the decal set in place before you curl that bottom. So just keep that in mind. That's another thing to don't let this one sit overnight. Let it sit for 10 to 20 minutes. Let the decal start to melt into the paint, and then come back and curl that bottom part of the iron cross under that box, whatever it is on the back. All right, so that concludes the painting of this kit. What I'm going to do one more time is once these decals are dry, either later today or tomorrow morning, I'm going to go back with that TS80, that clear coat. And I won't really hammer any of the areas where there aren't decals, but I'm going to make sure to get 2 nice light coats over those decals, with some time to dry in between just to seal them in. And I might sand those 215 decals a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling later today. But make sure to seal those in. We did a lot of work to get them in, so that's what we're going to do. And really, really happy with the way this is. I love, again, I took artistic liberties with the gray underneath. I didn't want a ton of gray to show. I just wanted some different chipping colors, because that reddish brown chipping color is pretty universal, but I think that gray really, really works nicely with it, especially with the light brown vehicle. So don't forget, guys, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and appreciate you guys watching. And we'll leave you with the finished product here.